Boom Loop San Francisco. The pulse of the town, from movers and shakers, breaking new ground. Hosted by the Lurie Group, rooted in true San Francisco's future, coming straight to you.
I'm Alexander Lurie, Camilo Acosta. Thank you. You're my friend, and you're also just so wise when it comes to all things agentic AI. You are an investor in the space, seed, pre-seed. You're running Perceptive Ventures, which invests in these early stage growth, big growth AI companies, and AI expert. You previously built and sold a machine learning fintech startup company, and then you led generative AI products at Meta. And you've been a strategic advisor to various AI founders. So to say that you have exposure and deep understanding of the space is an understatement. So thanks for joining us today. And it's just really great to have you on the pod.
I appreciate that intro, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. The birthplace of AI is right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that has a lot of incredible things that will happen, have already happened for San Francisco. We're not just talking about real estate prices, we're talking about how things will manifestly look different on our streets, and we're going to chat about all that today, about how there is this new industrial revolution happening right here, ground zero, where we're seated here in San Francisco. You've likened AI and what we're seeing in AI as akin to the Industrial Revolution. Like, can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's a new software and tech stack that changes absolutely everything about how we live, how we work, how we play, how we interact. That's why it's akin to the Industrial Revolution. It's going to redefine work itself. It's going to create new industries. It's going to completely evaporate existing industries. That's why it's just so similar to these previous revolutions that have existed in civilization. I think the last one we experienced was the Industrial Revolution, which in many ways impacted blue-collar jobs for the most part. But this one is actually starting with white-collar jobs, which is sort of an interesting twist on this AI revolution.
So let's talk about the San Francisco Bay Area. I mean, a lot of our jobs here are white-collar, right? So I think Dario, the head of Anthropic, has said in the next couple of years, 20% of white-collar jobs won't be around due to agentic AI and AI, right? So if I got that right. What does that mean for our workforce? How is it going to evolve? What is it going to change? I'm asking you to wave a little bit of a look into the future.
Sure.
But to the extent somebody can, you can. What's going to happen?
A lot of the entry-level jobs across a variety of industries are going to get automated. Those simpler workflows that are easier to automate are the first ones to go. So I'm not envious of college grads today, particularly in fields like engineering or design, where you have to be AI native today. You can't get out into the workforce and not know how to use Cursor or some of the more AI native tools in design. So those jobs are going to go away first, those sort of more entry-level jobs. But over time, AI gets better, and you're going to see more and more of the automation of more high-skilled jobs. I think people have been talking about, for example, the legal space for a while now and how that could get automated. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to take more time to automate those kinds of jobs, especially in regulated fields like law, where you need to be licensed to practice.
Right.
But it will get there eventually.
And there's such nuance in location. I mean, San Francisco, as a real estate agent, I mean, it is so specific here versus being in Marin or East Bay or Peninsula. Right. So politics is local, I guess they say.
Right. Yeah. And in the way you describe it, it actually reminds me of data sets. Like, there are data sets that are local. There's law. We could talk about, the California sort of legal code. That's going to be its own little sort of data set and experiences there that need to be codified into code and trained and whatnot. And maybe similar with real estate, like understanding this local market requires a certain kind of data set. And it's going to take a while before that data set becomes software and becomes agentic. But we'll get there.
I should add too, because it's only fair. I mean, before founding Perceptive Ventures, you previously built and sold a machine learning fintech startup and led generative AI product teams at Meta. I mean, this is a space that you are so fluid and experienced in. And you've been a strategic advisor to AI founders building frontier applications. Yeah. I should also say thank you for the work you're doing. I know you're on the board at Friends School here in San Francisco, so you're active in the community as well, which says a lot. And thanks for that. So like Industrial Revolution. I mean, so are OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity and are these the future Microsofts?
Yeah.
Googles? what are we talking about here? Like, maybe help us understand, where are we in the cycle, the life cycle of this industrialization curve?
The very earliest days. It's only been 2.5 years since the advent of ChatGPT, which is nothing. And I often think about human flight. We went from the first human flight in 1903 to 66 years later, not very long, landing on the moon. And now we have spacecraft that have left our solar system. I mean, it's kind of wild when you think about that. And this revolution is taking place at a much faster clip and a higher impact to everyday people than that industrial revolution, which allowed for spaceflight and human flight in general. So that's the crazy part of this revolution. It's just the speed at which it's occurring, which speaks to Dario's point of saying that in a few years, 20% of white collar jobs will be automated. I don't know if that number is correct, but it is directionally correct.
Yeah. So going back to the college students and people who currently have jobs that may not be, at least take the same form a couple years from now due to agentic AI, what guidance would you have for them? What are some things that they can be thinking about, that we can be thinking about, so that we can pivot with the times?
Right. It's going to be tough. Again, with the Industrial Revolution, we saw increased productivity, increased job creation, but also loss of jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you had farriers that made horseshoes for horses. Those jobs are pretty much gone. Very few of those people still around. Something similar will occur in this revolution. I think what's going to be hard is the speed at which it's happening. It's going to hit people in a way that is unexpected. The advent of the motorized vehicle, of cars, took several years, took decades really to take place on a global level. This is not happening at that glacial pace in comparison. It is happening much faster. So I don't know if there's like great advice for people, frankly, to what careers to pursue, other than to say that, interestingly enough, a lot of blue collar jobs are going to be some of the safest.
If the capital, the hub of AI in the world is San Francisco Bay Area, what are the types of jobs that's going to be attracting, right? With agentic AI sunsetting certain types of jobs, other jobs will have to pop up to support that. So what are the types of jobs that these companies are going to be recruiting for? What does our future workforce look like is the real question in San Francisco Bay Area.
So there's always going to be a need for more AI engineers. Like, that is definitely a huge demand right now. There's not even enough right now to satisfy the need out there. So that's like one pocket on the sort of white collar side. When you think about AI and embodied AI, which is really robotics, there's going to be fleets and fleets of humanoids, of automated vehicles of different kinds, not just autonomous cars. Who's going to maintain those?
Right.
We're going to need humans to run those warehouses that manage those fleets, to maintain those robots, because they're going to need repairs, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be a huge source of jobs for all of that.
And they'll have to be relatively technical. I mean, well-trained. This is not a remedial job. This is a highly trained, these are sophisticated machines. Yeah.
Fixing a robot is not a entry-level job.
I'll share my wife, Danielle. So Danielle's over at Zipline, right? And so they're revolution. I mean, it's the largest drone delivery company in the world.
Yeah.
And they rely on AI, and they are, in a very real way, in the future, like the last mile delivery. Like, why are we having a 2-ton car deliver a burrito when you can have a drone deliver it to your doorstep that's more efficient, less expensive, and better for the environment?
Right.
And so change is in our midst. Totally get that. So Mary Meeker, somebody American venture capitalist, former Wall Street securities analyst, she called AI the fastest adopted tech in history. I mean, you were touching on that. And she has her annual report. In her 2025 annual report, talked about how costs are dropping for computational, like to actually crunch, like for ChatGPT to function, to solve the questions that are being asked, are down 99%. I mean, question is, are we in an AI infrastructure boom the way that the cloud boom was a decade ago? What does the future look like in that regard?
Yeah, this infrastructure boom, which is really at the core of it is the LLMs and the cost of inference for LLMs having gone down, which is what she was referring to, has allowed for an application layer boom. So it's not just infrastructure, but very quickly also application layer. In the same way that the cloud boom allowed for mobile devices to really become supercomputers in our pockets.
Right. So like we're keeping things on the cloud, right? Like, okay.
Exactly. And similarly with this infrastructure boom in AI and in terms of LLMs and the cost of inference going down, it's made it so much cheaper for startups to get off the ground, because now they're not having to pay, absorb just crazy amounts of money to answer basic questions when someone interacts with their app of whatever it does. So now you're going to see a lot more startups coming to SF to just get off the ground because it's so much cheaper. The capital goes so much further now.
Interesting. And why SF?
Talent. So at the end of the day, there's this flywheel effect that San Francisco is amazing at because of three ingredients, talent being the core ingredient. But then you have these other two things that play a key role. One is like institutions. You have things like Stanford, Berkeley, Meta, Google. These are incubation centers for talent. People graduating from Stanford and going to these companies, or people working at these companies and then leaving to start companies. These are incubation centers. And then all of that is fueled by venture capital. And there's an incredible venture capital ecosystem that's unrivaled anywhere in the world here in SF and in the Bay Area. And so when those three ingredients combine, it's this like combustion engine that is almost impossible to stop and compete with.
The talent, the companies, and the money. Is that those are the three?
Yeah, talent, companies, but also the institutions like Stanford and Berkeley.
That's right,
are key to that.
So yeah, fair enough. History shows how tightly tech and real estate are linked. And for instance, after IPOs, often you'll see housing prices appreciate really quickly.
Right.
What do we think is going to happen? I mean, I would think that the money in our ecosystem is about to just surge. I mean, we've talked about, there's been newly minted millionaires when those IPOs happen, but it seems like if this is the beginning of the industrial revolution, this new revolution of progress here, I mean, are we talking about like just flooded with million and billionaires in San Francisco Bay Area? Like what's that going to do for our housing market, I guess?
That's the tough part about all this, right? When you flood the market with a lot of wealth, and particularly somewhat concentrated wealth, housing prices go up. And part of what the city needs to do is keep up with the demand and make sure that there's enough housing for people who work in industries that support those jobs, right? Or even local communities, right? Our firefighters and police and hospital workers should also be able to live and afford to live in the neighborhoods that they serve. So I think that becomes a tension.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's another reason I'm so bullish on residential real estate for the rest of this decade and beyond in San Francisco Bay Area, but specifically the city. I mean, I just think we're just at the precipice, as you said. We're 2.5 years into ChatGPT. I mean, how long is Meta's been around for? What? I mean,
20 plus years
or 25 years.
21.
So 21 years, and I mean it's. My gosh, the early days. So yeah, I am so bullish on San Francisco real estate market. I mean, for that reason, so much more. I just think that people that are on the sidelines saying, should I get in now, whether it's investing in office space, because we see AI, I mean, they're taking a ton of office space. Let's talk about that for a second. OpenAI was in the Mission, right? And then they moved over to, was it Mission Bay?
Mission Bay, yeah.
And then Anthropic's on Market Street. How much space are these folks taking? How much space will they grow into, and who else is coming up behind them? Certainly it's not just those two companies. There's a lot of other companies that you're excited about. Yeah,
I mean, those companies alone have exploded in size. If you look at the original OpenAI building, it's a relatively small sort of warehouse looking space in the Mission, and now
right next to Dandelion Chocolate.
Yes,
was that right?
Next to exactly, by Dandelion Chocolate, and now they've taken over I think half of Uber's former footprint in Mission Bay. I mean, it's massive growth. And Anthropic is on a similar trajectory. But there's lots of other companies which have historically also been really important to commercial real estate in San Francisco, which are the growing startups. And in AI, that's companies like Glean and Writer and Harvey that are super well funded, that are growing like crazy as well. They're not of the mainstream recognition of an OpenAI, but they are critical in our local ecosystem and in AI in general.
Yeah. Yeah, and in AI, I mean, not only is it supporting certainly the residential side, but the office space for a second, going back there, how much square footage are they going to need to take? I mean, they're computational, there's inference costs. Ostensibly, they're not local here in the city, although maybe they're nearby. I mean, these warehouses to have all the hardware to be able to support all the queries online. But how much office space, how much human capital is going to be required to service these organizations, these AI organizations?
I mean, I would argue all of it. There's no reason why it wouldn't be all of it. This being the center of the universe, not just of technology writ large, but of AI. So if you think about it that way, there's no reason why San Francisco wouldn't just be taken over by all of these companies, both the ones that we already know, Anthropic and OpenAI, and the ones that are yet to come.
Yeah.
Because this feels like 1999, maybe, I would argue more like 1995-ish of the internet. This is where we are with AI. And imagine like where we are today after that boom, right? And so there's going to be more Googles and Microsofts and Facebooks that will be born that are still in someone's head as an idea.
It's amazing. Yeah, because right now we have something like 80 million square feet of commercial space available in San Francisco, of which roughly, let's call it 25 million is vacant. How fast are these folks growing? How fast are these companies scaling such that they're going to need that space? And when do we anticipate that we're not going to have inventory again in commercial?
I think it's an interesting question, especially when you think about how a legacy business like Google and Microsoft are in size. They're massive companies. We don't tend to see them fully in the city because they have big presence in the city, but their big campuses are down in the peninsula. That's where a ton of those people work.
Sure.
Even if a lot of them, if not most of them, live here in the city. I think it's going to be interesting because OpenAI and Anthropic might be different. They might build an urban campus. They might just always be in SF.
Yeah.
So imagine like a Google-sized company in SF.
Right.
That's transformative.
Right. And do we have that right now? Do we have anything like that?
I don't think so. I mean, Salesforce might be the closest.
Fair. Okay. Talk a little bit about the transformation we might see on the streets in San Francisco. I mean, I chat a little bit about Zipline and, for delivery, we might see our skies with some drones soon. But there's robots being tested on the street in Palo Alto. Like, how does our physical world change? Like, we know real estate, there's going to be demand for real estate because people need to live somewhere and there's going to be more money in the ecosystem. That's going to drive prices, sure. But how does our physical world change in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? I mean, any sort of guesses or informed guesses on that would be great.
I think the physical world will remain the same. It's just we are going to get used to seeing embodied AI, different forms of AI-driven robotics everywhere, whether it's humanoids in our homes and in the streets or different kinds of automated vehicles, like you mentioned, these delivery machines that roam the streets or drones in our skies. I think that's going to be the change in our physical landscape. Less so than like the buildings themselves. Because the way that this innovation is unfolding, we're building these robotic systems to adapt to the built world, and the built world is centered around our form, our size, or how we have limbs, and there's doorknobs that we turn with our hands. All of that is really made for us, and the robots that are being developed are going to be made to work and live in that world as well. So the physical world will change, in just that there's going to be these little creatures that are machines all over the place doing different tasks.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Cities historically move really slow. They're like Titanic ships that just can't steer very fast when things change. AI is changing so fast. Embodied AI is changing so fast. Now, we've got Waymo in San Francisco, right? We've got a lot, different forms of AI that are hitting our streets, or embodied AI and agentic AI that's playing out here. But what would be your guidance for our city, for the mayor's office, for governments around the country and the world to sort of adopt and promote this inevitability, which is the rise of AI?
Yeah. I think it's a few things. One, it's making it easy to start businesses. So some cities make it easier than others. San Francisco has had issues with that in the past, but the mayor's been working really hard on tackling that, which has been great to see. The second issue is regulatory concerns. Uber, for example, faced regulatory hurdles across cities around the world in making their service legal just to operate. We might see similar things with robots of different kinds. Even Waymo has to interact on a municipal and state level and federal level to make sure its service is allowed to operate. So how do we make that easier to occur as these innovations unfold? And then finally, I think the third thing is almost the most important, which is just kitchen table issues of crime and safety and cleanliness of our streets. We want to make sure that the employees who are here working at these companies feel safe, feel good, have affordable housing to live in. I'll never forget when I was a founder, my company was based in Soma, and one of my competitors, we were like frenemies, and we would catch up from time to time. And I'll never forget, he told me the story about how he would send his female employees home before sunset. And I was like, why? And he's like, I just didn't feel safe letting them stay past sunset. And after sunset, I would hear gunshots. And he's like, I just didn't want them being unsafe walking home and getting home somehow. And we shouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so, we sometimes divorce tech and the growth of tech in San Francisco from the just basics that we need to live and work in the city.
Right.
So as long as those issues continue to be tackled, which I think the mayor's doing an awesome job of, I think we're going to be fine.
What I've heard from you so far is AI is going to grow. We're early innings, and they're going to need more talent to support the growth and also more office space. And there's no reason that it wouldn't take all the office space. By when, TBD. But if they need office space, they also need homes. So we are at the early innings of not just the growth of the industry, but also the growth of San Francisco because it's based here in residential and commercial space. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you. Does that sound okay? So, and you've talked about that there's a role for city stewards to play in this by making it a place that is safe. I know public safety is Daniel Lurie. It's hard. When I'm talking about my brother, I'm like never know what to say. But the mayor's top priority is public safety. But you also said starting small businesses because a lot of these businesses start small, right? Yeah. And so you've mentioned a few that many of us hadn't heard about before, like Glean, was it? And among others. So, what is not happening right now that's going to need to happen in the future?
I actually think it's the implementation of AI in government and government services. Government services are just generally a bottleneck. Nobody likes going to the DMV and waiting for hours, right? So that's a classic example and one of hundreds. Even just getting a license for opening a business in San Francisco takes a lot of time, and that's been something that's being tackled right now. So how do you actually use AI to automate all of these workflows to make them faster and better and make the experience so much better for our citizens here? I think that's actually an area for a lot of exploration for our city.
So for those of us who want to be more than just consumers, but want to help promote AI, want to invest in AI, I mean, how can we do that? People like me who aren't, I'm a real estate agent or somebody who's working at Salesforce. I mean, how can they be financially part of and promote the future of AI?
Voting with your dollars, frankly, whether it's supporting companies that you believe in and what they're doing with their products and services, supporting firms, venture firms that are investing in these companies, and also supporting the folks that are making it possible for these companies to exist on a regulatory level, whether it's, great city leaders like Daniel who are doing the right thing, or state leaders that are doing the right thing on AI. Some of them are not, some of them are. And also federal officials that are doing the right thing because some of them haven't in the past. So it's knowing where some of these folks stand and voting accordingly, with your vote, but also if you want to with your dollars and your time.
I mean, I have to ask because there's very few people that are doing seed, pre-seed. Like if somebody wanted to invest with you, I mean, what does that process look like? I mean, accredited investor. I mean, tell us a little bit about the types of people that invest with you.
Yeah, so in venture, there's sort of three layers of what we call limited partners, who are the investors in funds like mine. You have high net worth individuals and family offices at like kind of the initial layer of that stack. And then above that, you have funds of funds, which are literally what it sounds like. These are funds that invest in other funds, and they pool capital from larger sources like endowments and pensions. And then at the top of that stack, you have those endowments and pensions, which are huge, multi-billion-dollar pools of capital that invest in fund of funds, invest in venture firms, and sometimes also directly into companies at growth stages. So those are the kind of the main sources of capital for venture firms like mine. And often these firms get started with individuals. It's individuals writing checks, small checks, to emerging managers like myself, because they believe in the industry, they believe in what they're investing in, and they believe that's the future, and that there's financial remuneration that comes as a part of investing in those kinds of firms.
And what kind of rounds are they typically raising? I mean, seed and pre-seed for an AI, agentic AI. Like how big a round are they typically?
Yeah,
are you seeing?
I think there's like two buckets. Like most companies are raising from pre-seed to seed anywhere from like $2-5-ish million is generally the sweet spot, generally kind of your median size. Of course, there's like the rounds that you hear of that are like $100 million seed,
sure,
things like that make headlines, but those are very rare. They do exist, and sometimes even more than that. But most of these are roughly like $2 to $5 million rounds.
Got it. What inning are we in right now in AI?
Yeah.
And the birth of AI, and how many innings will there be?
Very first innings. This is just the beginning, which is both awesome and scary, but also ripe for so much potential and so much reward for the city, for people participating in this part of the economy, et cetera, and the economy overall. How many innings are there? I don't know if there is an end to this, frankly. I think in many ways, this feels like a great leap forward for our civilization, for our species, and I don't know what comes after that. People talk about the singularity, where it's like the merging of computers and humans. Neuralink being kind of the first kind of mainstream company talking about that sort of stuff. But it starts now.
Okay. How many publicly traded AI first companies will there be in 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
I think every company has to be AI first moving forward. You are not competitive as a business in any industry today onwards if you're not AI first. And I don't care if you're building a new pool services company or you're building a software company. Like, you have to have AI as part of your tech stack because it lowers your costs on the human capital side so much that it makes you competitive in a way that not being AI native does not.
Okay. So maybe a reframe then is like the companies that are founded in this AI birth, like Anthropic and OpenAI. I mean, when do we start seeing these companies go public?
That's a great question. The IPO window has been closed for a while, and it's going to be really dependent on the markets. Let's see what happens with the markets. The other key element here is M&A activity. M&A activity drives a lot of the liquidity in our ecosystem here in San Francisco. It's an important source of returning capital to investors and to shareholders and employees, et cetera. And that's been largely on hold over the last 4+ years. The new administration has made it clear that they intend to be more business friendly and allow for more M&A activity. So we'll see how that shakes out and how companies feel about it. Meta, for example, just a couple of days ago announced a $15 billion infusion into Scale AI. It's going to drive a lot of liquidity back into the ecosystem here because that money isn't going to the company, it's going to investors in the company.
And people will liquidate and then they have money to
invest.
To invest buy homes. Right, exactly. Yeah. What is a question that I didn't ask today that you feel like needs or deserves an answer for the listeners?
One of the things that we talked about at the event that might be, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's just like the key role that San Francisco is playing in a geopolitical sort of fight with China. This city is actually at the forefront.
Yeah, it's not just U.S. versus China. It's actually San Francisco Bay Area versus China. I mean, if we really want to...
If we want to talk, NVIDIA, Meta, OpenAI, Anthropic, these are all players in that.
Right. What does that look like for our relationship with China? Does that put us in a position of needing to, not just the federal government having discussions with China, but leaders locally, I guess, having discussions directly with China?
Yeah, it's fascinating because right now we are in the Manhattan Project of our time. But unlike the space race and the nuclear arms race, which were led by government, this Manhattan Project is being led by private industry. And it's private industry here in San Francisco. So it's a very unique situation geopolitically where it's private industry is playing the leading role in this AI arms race with China, and it's companies here in San Francisco.
Camilo, thank you for joining. This has been absolutely fascinating. I just want to thank you for everything you're doing in the space to support our city, to support institutions in our city. Thanks for taking the time today, and just excited for what lays ahead for us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
Thanks. The Manhattan Project of our time. That is
so many good lines.